The stars looked like tiny dots of light against the black canvas of space as the human ship Perseverance traveled along its patrol route. Captain Jack sat in his command chair on the bridge, his eyes tracking the information on the main screen. The ship hummed with a steady beat, the sound of a well-maintained machine doing its job. "Another quiet day," Jack said, stretching his arms above his head. He had been captain for 5 years now, and most days passed without trouble. That was normal for patrols along the outer edges of Galactic Cooperative space. The Galactic Cooperative included 57 different alien species. Humans were the newest members, having joined only 20 years ago. Most alien races came from calm, peaceful planets. Humans did not. Earth was what aliens called a death world, a planet filled with dangers like storms, earthquakes, deadly animals, and disease. Living on such a world had made humans tough and ready for trouble. Jack looked around at his crew. Tanner worked at the communication station, her fingers moving over the controls as she checked for signals. Reed stood at the tactical station, his tall frame rigid as he watched the sensors for any signs of danger. Dr. Ellis studied data on her science console, her gray hair tied back neatly. In the engine room below, Engineer Morgan kept the ship's systems running perfectly. They were a good crew, each chosen for their skills and quick thinking. The Perseverance was a good ship too, built strong, with backup systems for every important function. This extra caution confused many alien engineers, who didn't understand why humans planned for so many possible failures. But on Earth, such planning often meant the difference between life and death. "Captain?" Tanner called suddenly, her hand pressing her earpiece tighter. "I'm picking up a signal. It's weak, but it sounds like a distress call." Jack sat up straight. "Can you clean it up? Where's it coming from?" Tanner's fingers moved quickly over her console. "It's coming from the Vega Nebula, sir. The signal is breaking up, but I can tell it's from a Luminary research vessel." The Vega Nebula was a huge cloud of gas and dust, famous for its beauty, and for hiding pirates. The Luminari were peaceful aliens with skin that glowed in different colors. They were known for their plant research and gentle ways. They were not fighters. "Put it on speaker," Jack ordered. A broken voice filled the bridge, the words cutting in and out. "Under attack, research data. Need immediate, not pirates. Please help." "Signal lost, sir," Tanner reported, "but I got coordinates before it cut out." Jack didn't hesitate. "Plot a course to those coordinates, maximum speed." Reed turned from his station, concern on his face. "Captain, protocol says we should call for backup first. 3 ships have been attacked in that region this month alone." "How long would it take backup to arrive?" Jack asked. Reed checked his console. "At least 6 hours, sir." "And how long will it take us to reach those coordinates?" 45 minutes at maximum speed," Jack nodded firmly. "The Luminari don't have 6 hours. We go now and we call for backup while we travel." "Sir," Reed persisted, "we don't know what's waiting for us. It could be a trap." Jack stood up and walked to the main view screen, looking at the stars. "Lieutenant Reed, when humans first met the Luminari, do you know what they did? They gave us seeds for plants that could clean polluted soil. They've helped us restore damaged parts of Earth without asking for anything in return." He turned to face his crew. "I'm not going to leave them to die while we wait safely at a distance." Reed nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Yes, sir, setting course now." "Tanner, send a message to Cooperative Command. Tell them we're responding to a distress call from a Luminary vessel in the Vega Nebula. Possible pirate attack. Request backup. To our coordinates." "Yes, Captain," Tanner replied, already sending the message. Jack pressed a button on his chair. "Engine room, this is the captain." Morgan's voice came through the speaker. "Engine room here. We need maximum speed to the Vega Nebula. There's a ship in trouble." "You'll have it, Captain. Engines are ready for full power." Jack addressed the entire bridge crew. "This could be anything from pirates to a mechanical failure. I want all stations ready for any situation. Dr. Ellis, prepare medical bay for possible injuries." "Already on it, Captain," Ellis replied, heading for the elevator. "Brooks," Jack called to his security chief, a strong woman with short black hair, "prepare a boarding team. If the Luminary ship is damaged, we may need to evacuate survivors. Yes, sir, Brooks responded, moving with purpose toward the weapon locker. The Perseverance changed course, its engines glowing brighter as it accelerated to maximum speed. Inside, the crew prepared for whatever they might find. Engineers checked systems and prepared repair tools. Security officers checked weapons and put on armor. Medical staff readied beds and medicine. Jack returned to his chair, feeling the slight vibration of the engines through the floor. This is what we train for, he said to Reed. This is why human ships carry extra weapons and have stronger shields than most cooperative vessels. Reed nodded. The other species think we're paranoid. They think that because they grew up on safe worlds, Jack replied. When you grow up on Earth, you learn that being prepared isn't paranoia, it's survival. As the ship raced toward the nebula, Jack thought about the Luminary. They were physically weak compared to humans. Their skin was thin and could be injured easily. Their home planet had no large predators or extreme weather. They had never needed to develop physical strength or fighting skills, but their minds were brilliant, and their understanding of plants and living things had helped many worlds. The thought of Luminary researchers facing pirates or worse made Jack's jaw tighten. The Galactic Cooperative was supposed to be a place where all species could travel safely, where the strong helped protect the less powerful. That was the point of working together. Approaching the Vega Nebula, Captain, Reed announced. Entering in 5 minutes. Jack activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands, this is the captain. We are responding to a distress call from a Luminary research vessel. We don't know exactly what we're facing, but someone needs our help. This ship and crew represent humanity to the galaxy. Let's show them what that means. The nebula appeared on the view screen, a massive cloud of purple and blue gas swirling with newborn stars. Somewhere in that beautiful chaos, someone was in danger. Jack felt his heart beat faster as the Perseverance prepared to enter the cloud. This was the moment when all the training, all the extra precautions that humans took would be tested. Shields up, Jack ordered. Weapon systems on standby. Take us in, slow and steady. Tanner, keep trying to contact that Luminary ship. The Perseverance entered the nebula, the gases swirling around the ship like colored smoke. Visibility dropped. Immediately. On the sensors, energy readings bounced and scattered, making it hard to get clear readings. This is why pirates like this place, Reed said. It's like trying to see through fog while someone shines a light in your eyes. Jack nodded. Stay sharp. Follow those coordinates exactly. Minutes passed as the ship pushed deeper into the nebula. The bridge was quiet, everyone focused on their tasks. Then Tanner straightened suddenly at her station. Captain, I'm picking up multiple ships ahead, 4 vessels. One matches Luminary design, the others are... She paused. Unknown configuration, sir. Not in our database. Jack felt a chill. Unknown ships meant possible first contact with a new species. And first contacts that began with attacks on research vessels rarely ended well. Red alert, he ordered. All hands to battle stations. Let's find out who our new friends are. The Perseverance moved forward, ready for whatever waited in the colorful mists ahead. The humans aboard didn't know it yet, but they were about to show the galaxy why species from Deathworlds should never be underestimated. The Perseverance pushed through the colorful gases of the nebula, its sensors working hard to cut through the interference. The bright blues and purples outside created dancing shadows across the bridge as Captain Jack leaned forward in his command chair. Visual contact in 30 seconds, Reed announced, his hands steady on the controls despite the tension in his voice. Jack nodded. Put it on the main screen as soon as we have a clear image. The crew waited, each person focused on their tasks. Engineer Morgan's voice came through the communication system from the engine room below. Shields at full power, Captain. I've routed extra energy to the forward sections. Good work, Morgan, Jack replied. The screen in front of them flickered, then cleared to show a scene that made several crew members gasp. A small ship with smooth, rounded edges and a soft blue glow was floating dead in space. Its hull showed several burn marks where it had been hit by weapons. Around it, 3 larger ships moved in a circle like predators stalking wounded prey. These ships were nothing like the Luminari vessel. They had sharp angles and dark metal hulls covered with what looked like spines. "That's a Luminari research ship," Dr. Ellis said, pointing at the damaged vessel. "Standard model usually carries 10 to 15 crew members." "And the others?" Jack asked. Reed shook his head as he studied his readings. "Unknown, sir. No match in our database. Their design doesn't match any known species in the cooperative." "They're armed heavily," Brooks observed from the security station. "I count multiple weapon ports along each hull." Jack made his decision. Quickly. "Tanner, open a channel. Let's try talking before shooting." "Channel open, sir," Tanner replied after a moment. Jack stood up, straightening his uniform. "This is Captain Jack of the Earth vessel Perseverance, representing the Galactic Cooperative. We are responding to a distress call from the Luminary ship. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." For several long seconds there was no response. The 3 unknown ships continued their circle around the damaged Luminari vessel. "They're scanning us, sir," Reed reported. "Pretty thorough scan, too. They're looking at everything from our shield output to our life support systems." Finally, the main screen changed to show an alien unlike any the crew had seen before. It had gray-scaled skin that looked hard like armor. 6 yellow eyes were arranged in a pattern around its head, and instead of a mouth, it had moving parts like an insect's mandibles that clicked as it prepared to speak. "This is Overlord Kren of the Swarm," the alien said, its voice translated by the ship's computer into a metallic-sounding version of human speech. "The vessel before us is our prize. Your interference is not welcome. Leave immediately or be destroyed." Jack kept his face calm, but he noted the term prize rather than captive or target. That single word told him a lot about these aliens' way of thinking. Overlord Kren, the ship you're surrounding belongs to a peaceful species that is a member of the Galactic Cooperative. If you have a dispute with them, we can arrange for neutral negotiators. There's no need for violence. The alien's mandibles clicked rapidly in what might have been laughter or irritation. "Negotiation? We do not negotiate for resources. We take what we need. Your small vessel against 3 of ours? Your species must be either very brave or very foolish." Before Jack could respond, the alien cut the transmission. The screen returned to the view of the ships outside. "They're powering up weapons, Captain," Reed said urgently. "All 3 ships." Jack dropped back into his chair and hit the ship-wide communication button. "All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. Prepare for combat and potential boarding action." Throughout the Perseverance, crew members moved quickly to their positions. In the armory, Brooks and her security team grabbed weapons and put on armored suits. In the medical bay, Dr. Ellis and her staff prepared for possible injuries. "Reed, target the lead ship's weapon systems only," Jack ordered. "I want to disable, not destroy. Let's see if we can change their minds about talking." "Targeting systems locked, sir. Fire when ready." The Perseverance fired its main weapons, sending bright beams of energy toward the largest of the 3 alien ships. The shots hit with precision, striking 2 of the weapon ports and causing small explosions along the hull. "Direct hits," Reed reported. "Their forward weapons are damaged." The response was immediate and overwhelming. All 3 alien ships turned toward the Perseverance and fired at once. The human ship shook as multiple energy blasts hit its shields. "Shields holding at 92%, Tanner called out, gripping her console to stay in her seat. "They're coordinating their attack," Reed said, studying the tactical display. "Very organized. They're targeting specific points on our shields, trying to create a weak spot." Jack nodded. On Earth, many predators hunted in packs, using similar tactics. "Let's show them we're not easy prey. Morgan, how much power can you give to the engines?" "For a short burst? I can give you 120% for about 30 seconds before the systems overheat," Morgan's voice replied. "Good. Reed, plot a course directly between 2 of their ships, then hard to port. We're going to break their formation and make a run for the Luminari vessel." Reed's eyes widened. Sir, that will expose our flank to their weapons. Yes, but it will also surprise them. Most species avoid risk. Humans use it to our advantage. Jack turned to Tanner. And while we're moving, broadcast, on all frequencies. Tell any surviving Luminari to prepare for emergency docking and evacuation. The plan was put into action immediately. The Perseverance surged forward, engines burning bright as it accelerated straight toward the gap between two alien ships. The unexpected move seemed to confuse the aliens. Their coordinated fire pattern broke for a few crucial seconds. The human ship shot between the two alien vessels, close enough that the crew could see details on the alien hulls through the viewports. Then, just as the aliens began to adjust their aim, the Perseverance turned sharply left, its shields flickering as they strained against the forces of the maneuver. Taking fire from the rear, Reed reported, as the ship shook again. Shields down to 78%. Keep going, Jack ordered. Status of the Luminari ship? I'm detecting life signs, sir, Dr. Ellis called from her station. At least 8 individuals. Their ship's life support is failing. The Perseverance continued its run toward the damaged research vessel, taking hits from behind as the alien ships gave chase. Jack watched the distance counter on his display, counting down the meters between them and the Luminari. 500 meters, 400, 300. Sir, Tanner called out suddenly. I'm getting a transmission from the Luminari ship. Put it through, Jack ordered. A weak voice filled the bridge, accompanied by static. Human vessel, this is lead researcher Ela of the Luminari Science Academy. Please help us. They attacked without warning. They're after our research data. We're coming to get you, Jack replied firmly. Prepare for emergency docking. We'll evacuate your crew. As the Perseverance closed the final distance to the Luminari ship, the alien vessels adjusted their approach, spreading out to surround both ships. They're trying to box us in, Reed warned. Let them try, Jack said. He pressed his communication button again. Brooks, prepare your boarding team at the main airlock. We're going to dock with the Luminari ship in approximately 2 minutes. Ready and waiting, sir, came Brooks's steady reply. The Perseverance reached the Luminari vessel and extended its docking tube, the metal connector stretching out to create a sealed passage between the two ships. The alien ships continued to fire, their weapons now more carefully aimed to avoid hitting the Luminari vessel. They want that ship intact, Jack realized aloud. Whatever research the Luminari were doing, these aliens wanted badly. As the docking procedure completed, Brooks and her team rushed through the tube into the damaged Luminari ship. The rest of the crew held their breath, waiting. The alien ships had stopped firing but now hovered nearby, their weapons still aimed at the Perseverance. Captain, Reed said quietly, I'm detecting energy buildups in all 3 alien ships. It looks like they're preparing for something bigger than their previous attacks. Jack's mind raced through their options. The Perseverance was temporarily vulnerable while connected to the Luminari ship. They couldn't move quickly or raise shields to full power without breaking the connection and potentially leaving people behind. His communication panel lit up. Captain, this is Brooks. We've found the Luminari crew. 8 survivors, some injured, but all able to move. There's something else you should know. Her voice dropped lower. The lead researcher says these aliens were specifically after their biological research data. Something about terraforming technology. And sir, they mentioned Earth several times during the attack. They were asking about our planet. Jack felt a cold feeling spread through his chest. This wasn't a random attack or simple piracy. These aliens had a specific interest in Earth. Get everyone back to the ship as quickly as possible, he ordered. We need to break away before they hit us with whatever they're charging up. As Brooks hurried the Luminari survivors toward the Perseverance, Jack stared at the alien ships on the screen, a new understanding dawning. They weren't just facing a threat to one ship. They might be facing a threat to their entire world. All Luminari aboard, Captain, Brooks called through the communication system. Her voice was tight with urgency. Sealing the airlock now. Disconnect docking tube and get us moving, Jack ordered immediately. Reed, evasive pattern Delta. Morgan, I need full power to engines and shields. The Perseverance shuddered as it pulled away from the damaged luminary ship. The docking tube retracted just as the first massive energy blast from the lead alien vessel sliced through space where they had been moments before. That would have cut right through our hull, Reed said, his eyes wide as he watched the readings on his screen. Their weapons are more powerful than they first appeared. Jack nodded grimly. They were holding back. Tanner, what's the status of our distress call? Any response from cooperative forces? Yes, sir, Tanner replied. 3 cooperative patrol ships are responding. ETA 45 minutes. We need to last that long, Jack said. He hit his communication button. Dr. Ellis, status of the Luminary? 8. Survivors total, Ellis replied from the medical bay. 2 with serious injuries, the others mostly suffering from smoke inhalation and minor burns. Their lead researcher, Illa, is asking to speak with you urgently. Send her to the bridge when she's able, Jack ordered. The ship rocked again, as another blast from the alien ships hit their shields. Shields at 64% and falling, Reed reported. They've adjusted their attack pattern again. They're coordinating even better now. Jack studied the tactical display, watching how the 3 alien ships moved together like parts of a single organism. It reminded him of something. They move like a swarm of insects, he said aloud. Perfect coordination, like they're sharing information instantly. The bridge door opened, and a tall, thin alien entered. The Luminari had pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly from within. As the alien moved closer, Jack could see patterns of light pulsing beneath the skin, changing from blue to green and back. This was how Luminari communicated their emotions. Captain Jack, the Luminari said, in a soft musical voice. I am lead researcher Ila. Thank you for saving my crew. Jack nodded respectfully but kept his attention split between the new arrival and the battle outside. We're not safe yet. Those ships are still trying to capture or destroy us. You said they were after your research data. What exactly were you studying that would make them attack so aggressively? Ila's skin pulsed with darker blue patterns, a sign of distress or concern in Luminari body language. We were studying a new method of accelerated plant growth for terraforming purposes. But that's not what they're after. The ship shook again, as another hit struck their shields. Shields at 51%, Captain, Reed called out. We can't take much more of this. Ila moved closer to Jack, the patterns on her skin now pulsing rapidly. 3 cycles ago, our sensors detected an unusual signal from an uncharted star system. We investigated and found evidence of an ancient civilization that had created powerful, biological weapons. Weapons that could transform entire worlds to suit their needs. Jack's eyes narrowed. And these attackers want that technology. Yes, Illa confirmed. They call themselves the Swarm. We had never encountered them before, but they intercepted our transmission to the Science Council about our discovery. They attacked us and began downloading our research data. They were particularly interested in information about Earth. Why Earth specifically? Jack asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. Illa's skin flashed with rapid pulses of light. Your world has the most diverse ecosystem in the known galaxy. More species of plants, animals, and microorganisms than any planet we've studied. To a species that uses biological weapons, Earth would be... She paused, searching for the right word. A treasure beyond measure. The main screen suddenly flickered, showing the face of Overlord Kren again. The alien's 6 yellow eyes seemed to glow with intensity. Your interference is futile, the swarm leader said. We have analyzed your vessel's capabilities. You cannot escape. Surrender now and we will allow your crew to live as subjects of the swarm. Jack stood tall, facing the screen. We're not surrendering our ship or our people. If you continue this attack, you'll face the consequences. The alien's mandibles clicked rapidly. Brave words from a doomed species. Your planet's biological wealth will soon serve the swarm. Our main fleet already moves toward your home system. The transmission ended abruptly. They're bluffing, Reed said, but his voice lacked conviction. They can't know where Earth is. Ila's skin pulsed with dark blue, almost purple light, a sign of great fear among the Luminari. They may not be bluffing. When they boarded our ship, they downloaded our navigational database. All cooperative planets are listed there, including Earth's coordinates. Jack felt a cold determination replace his earlier uncertainty. This wasn't just about saving one ship anymore. It was about protecting their entire world. "New plan," he announced to the bridge crew. "We're not just trying to survive until help arrives. We need to stop these ships from rejoining their fleet. If they have Earth's coordinates, we can't let them transmit that information." Reed looked at his captain with concern. "Sir, we're outnumbered and outgunned." "Yes, but we have something they don't," Jack replied. "We have human ingenuity. And we have knowledge they don't expect us to have thanks to Ela." He turned to the Luminary researcher. "Tell me everything you learned about them during your time on their ship. How do they communicate? What are their weaknesses?" Ela's skin began to pulse with a lighter blue, a sign of hope or determination. "Their ships are connected through a hive mind. They share information instantly, which is why they coordinate so well. But this connection might also be a weakness. If one ship experiences something unexpected, it might disrupt the others as they process the new information." Jack smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile, but the kind humans made when facing a difficult challenge. "That's exactly what I needed to know." He pressed his communication button. "Engineer Morgan, I need you on the bridge now. And bring your terraforming equipment schematics." "On my way, Captain," Morgan replied, sounding confused. Jack turned to Dr. Ellis. "Doctor, how much do you know about insect biology?" Ellis blinked in surprise. "Quite a bit, actually. I specialized in comparative xenobiology before joining this crew." "Perfect. I need you to work with Morgan when he arrives. We're going to give the swarm something they've never experienced before." As the ship continued to shake under the swarm's attack, Jack explained his plan to the crew. It was dangerous, unusual, and exactly the kind of thinking that made humans different from other species. Most spacefaring races evolved on peaceful worlds where cooperation and technology developed naturally. Humans came from a world where survival often meant using the environment itself as a weapon. When Morgan arrived on the bridge a few minutes later, he carried a portable computer with detailed plans for terraforming equipment, machinery designed to make hostile environments habitable for humans. "You want to use our terraforming systems as a weapon?" Morgan asked after Jack explained his idea. "It's never been done before, but..." He paused, studying the schematics. "Theoretically, it could work. We'd need to reverse the atmospheric converters, overload the radiation filters, and modify the output frequencies." "Can you do it?" Jack asked simply. Morgan rubbed his chin, then nodded slowly. "Yes, but I'll need at least 15 minutes to make the modifications, and we'd have to get very close to their ships for it to work." "That's my problem to solve," Jack said. He turned to Reed. "Lieutenant, I need our best evasive maneuvers for the next 15 minutes. Keep us alive while Morgan works." Reed nodded, determination in his eyes. "Yes, sir." Jack looked at Ela, whose skin now pulsed with a mix of blue and green lights, showing both hope and fear. "Your people developed peaceful uses for biological science. Now we'll show you how humans from a death world think about biology when our survival is threatened." As Morgan hurried back to engineering to begin the modifications, Jack returned to his command chair. Outside, the 3 swarm ships continued their coordinated attack, pressing their advantage with cold efficiency. They had no way of knowing that the supposedly outmatched human vessel was preparing a response that no hive mind could have predicted. The next 15 minutes would determine not just their fate, but potentially the fate of Earth itself. "Shields at 38%, Captain," Reed called out as another blast from the swarm ships rocked the Perseverance. "We can't take much more of this." Captain Jack gripped the arms of his command chair, his mind racing. They needed to buy time for Morgan to modify the terraforming equipment. "Tanner, what's our status on the distress call?" "Cooperative forces still 32 minutes out, sir," she replied, holding on to her console as the ship shook again. Jack made a quick decision. "Reed, target all weapons on the smallest swarm ship. Full power, aim for their engines." "But sir, that would leave us with minimal power for shields," Reed objected. "I know. Do it anyway." Jack's voice was firm, Sometimes the best defense is a strong offense. Reed hesitated only for a second before following orders. Targeting smallest vessel's engine section. Firing all weapons. The Perseverance fired everything it had. Bright beams of energy shot across space, striking the smallest of the 3 swarm ships. The alien vessel's shields flickered, then failed as the concentrated attack overwhelmed them. The ship's engine section exploded in a burst of blue and orange fire. "Direct hit," Reed announced, surprise evident in his voice. "Their ship is disabled." On the bridge, the crew watched as the damaged swarm ship drifted, no longer a threat. The other 2 ships immediately changed their attack pattern, moving apart to avoid presenting a single target. "They're adapting," Jack observed, "but they're also being more cautious now." He hit his communication button. "Morgan, status report?" "Modifications at 60%, Captain," Morgan's voice came through, accompanied by the sounds of tools and equipment being moved around. "I need 10 more minutes." "You've got 5, Jack replied. "The swarm ships are regrouping." On the screen, the 2 remaining alien vessels had stopped firing and were moving into new positions. Jack studied their movements, trying to predict their next move. "They're repositioning to attack from opposite sides," Reed said. Classic pincer maneuver. Ela, who had remained on the bridge, moved closer to Jack. The patterns of light under her blue skin were pulsing rapidly. "Captain, there's something important you should know about the swarm. Their ships have a central processing node, similar to what humans would call a brain. If we could disrupt that node, it might confuse their entire system." "Where is this node located?" Jack asked. "At the center of each ship, protected by their thickest armor," Ila answered. "But there may be another way to reach it. The swarm relies on external sensors to collect information. If those sensors received overwhelming or contradictory data, it might overload the processing node." Jack's eyes lit up with understanding. Like shining a bright light into someone's eyes to blind them temporarily. He turned to Dr. Ellis. "Doctor, could we use our communication array to send out an overwhelming signal burst?" Ellis thought for a moment. "Yes, but it would have to be on very specific frequencies to match their sensor systems. And we'd need to know those frequencies." All eyes turned to Illa. The Luminari's skin glowed brighter. "When they attacked our ship, we managed to scan some of their systems. I have data on their communication frequencies." "Get that data to Ellis and Tanner immediately," Jack ordered. "Let's give these swarm ships the worst headache they've ever had." While Ela worked with Ellis and Tanner to prepare the signal burst, the 2 remaining swarm ships completed their repositioning and resumed their attack. The Perseverance shook violently as energy blasts hit it from both sides. "Shields at 22%, Reed reported, his voice tense. "Hull breaches on decks 3 and 4. Emergency bulkheads deployed." Jack pressed his communication button again. "Damage control teams to decks 3 and 4. Morgan, we need that terraforming equipment now." "Just finished the modifications, Captain," Morgan replied. "But there's a problem. We need to get much closer to the swarm ships for this to work. Almost within touching distance." Jack looked at the tactical display, studying the positions of the enemy ships. "How close exactly?" "Within 100 meters, Morgan said, "and we'd need to hold that position for at least 30 seconds while the system powers up." Reed shook his head. "Sir, that's suicide. They'd cut us to pieces at that range." "Not if they can't." "See us coming," Jack replied. He turned to Tanner and Ellis. "Is that signal burst ready?" "Yes, Captain," Ellis replied. "Using the frequencies Illa provided, we've created a burst that should temporarily overwhelm their sensor systems, but it will only last about 45 seconds. "That's all we need," Jack said. He stood up from his chair and addressed the entire bridge. "Here's the plan. We'll fire the signal burst to blind their sensors. Then we'll use our emergency thrusters to move quickly alongside the larger of the 2 ships. Once we're in position, Morgan will activate the modified terraforming equipment. If this works, we should be able to disable at least 1 more of their ships." He looked at each crew member in turn, seeing determination in their eyes. "This is extremely dangerous. But if we don't stop these ships from rejoining their fleet, Earth will be in grave danger. This is what humans do best. We take risks when necessary to protect what matters." Jack returned to his chair and opened a ship-wide channel. All hands secure for extreme maneuvers. This is going to get rough. The crew braced themselves as Jack gave the order to begin. Ellis, Tanner, fire the signal burst now. A powerful burst of energy shot out from the Perseverance's communication array, flooding the surrounding space with signals precisely tuned to the frequencies the swarm ships used for their sensors. The effect was immediate. Both alien vessels stopped firing and began moving erratically like they had suddenly gone blind. "It's working," Reed exclaimed. "Their attack pattern has completely broken down." "Now for Phase 2, Jack said. "Reed, full emergency thrust. Take us right alongside." The larger ship. The Perseverance shot forward, using its emergency thrusters to quickly close the distance to the larger swarm vessel. The human ship vibrated violently as the thrusters pushed it beyond normal safety limits. Distance to target, 200 meters, 150, 100. Reed counted down, his hands moving quickly over the controls. "We're in position, Captain." Jack hit his communication button. "Morgan, now." In the engineering section, Morgan activated the modified terraforming equipment. Originally designed to transform hostile environments into habitable ones, the machinery had been reversed to do the opposite, create conditions that were extremely hostile to the swarm's biology. The equipment hummed to life, emitting waves of energy that couldn't be seen but struck the nearby swarm ship with full force. The energy penetrated the alien vessel's hull and began disrupting the carefully balanced biological systems inside. On the screen, the crew watched as lights flickered across the swarm ship's hull. Sections of it began to power down, and its weapons stopped firing completely. "It's working," Ellis said, excitement in her voice. "The modified terraforming energy is disrupting their biological systems." The signal burst was beginning to fade, however, and the second swarm ship was already recovering from its effects. It turned toward the Perseverance, weapons powering up again. "We've got company," Reed warned. "The second ship is coming around for another attack." Jack made another quick decision. "Break away from the disabled ship. Reed, put as much distance between us and them as possible. We've done enough damage for now." As the Perseverance pulled away from the disabled swarm vessel, the second ship fired on them. With their shields severely weakened, the blast tore through the human ship's defenses and struck the hull directly. "Hull breach on Deck 2, Tanner called out. "Fires reported in sections 4 through 7. "Emergency teams respond," Jack ordered calmly, despite the chaos. "Seal off those sections if necessary." On the tactical display, Jack could see that they had disabled 2 of the 3 swarm ships. Only 1 remained functional. And then, appearing at the edge of the display, new signals appeared. The cooperative patrol ships were finally arriving. "Sir, cooperative forces have entered the nebula," Reed reported, relief evident in his voice. "They'll be in weapons range in 2 minutes." Jack allowed himself a small smile. They had held out long enough. Earth's coordinates were safe for now, but as he looked at the disabled swarm ships, he knew this was just the beginning. Somewhere out there, a swarm fleet was heading toward Earth, unaware that their advanced scouts had been defeated. The battle was won, but the war was just beginning. The cooperative patrol ships arrived with weapons charged, surrounding the remaining functional swarm vessel. Their arrival couldn't have been better timed. The Perseverance was badly damaged, with multiple hull breaches and shields nearly depleted. "Cooperative vessels are hailing us, Captain," Tanner reported, relief evident in her voice. "Put them on screen," Jack ordered. The main screen lit up to show the commanding officer of the lead cooperative patrol ship. Admiral Vex was a tall, slender alien, with silvery skin and large dark eyes, a member of the Solari species known for their tactical brilliance. "Captain Jack," the Admiral said, "your distress call mentioned an unknown hostile force. I see you've been busy while waiting for our arrival." Jack nodded tiredly. "Admiral, we have 2 disabled swarm vessels, and 1 still combat-capable. These aren't ordinary pirates. They're advanced scouts for an invasion force targeting Earth and possibly other cooperative worlds." Admiral Vex's expression turned serious. "That's a grave accusation, Captain. Do you have evidence?" "We have rescued Luminary researchers who were attacked by the swarm, and we have data downloaded from their ship," Jack replied. The swarm is interested in Earth's biodiversity for use in biological weapons. They already have our coordinates. As if on cue, the remaining swarm ship tried to make a run for it, accelerating away from the cooperative vessels. It didn't get far. The patrol ships fired in unison, disabling its engines within seconds. "We'll take custody of these vessels," Admiral Vex said. "Your ship appears to be in need of immediate repairs. Do you require evacuation?" Jack looked around at his crew, seeing determination in their eyes despite their exhaustion. "No evacuation needed, Admiral. We can make it back to the nearest station if you can provide an escort." "Of course," Vex replied. "But first I want to hear exactly what happened here and what we're potentially facing." Over the next hour, as repair teams worked to stabilize the Perseverance's damaged systems, Jack, Hila, and the senior officers met in the ship's conference room with Admiral Vex and his security team. They shared everything they had learned about the swarm, from their biology to their tactics. "Based on their communications, we believe their main fleet is already on its way to Earth," Jack explained, pointing to star charts they had projected onto the conference room wall. "The question is, how do we stop them?" Admiral Vex studied the data carefully. "The Cooperative Council will need to be informed immediately. We can dispatch a defense fleet to Earth system, but it may take time to gather enough ships." "Time is the one thing we don't have," Jack replied. "And even with a defense fleet, we'd be fighting on their terms. We need to be smarter than that." Engineer Morgan, who had been quiet until now, leaned forward. "Captain, what if we could use what we learned about their biology against their entire fleet?" All eyes turned to Morgan as he continued. "The modified, terraforming equipment worked on the individual ships. If we could scale it up, create a larger field effect, we'd need a massive power source," Jack said, catching on to Morgan's thinking, "and a way to deploy it directly in the path of their fleet." Hila's skin pulsed with bright patterns of light as she joined the conversation. "The Luminary Science Academy has been developing large-scale terraforming systems for use on dead worlds. The principles are the same, just at a much larger scale." Dr. Ellis nodded excitedly. "And if we combine that with what we've learned about the swarm's biological weaknesses, we could create a defense system that would make Earth too costly for them to attack." Jack looked at Admiral Vex. "We don't need to defeat their entire fleet in battle. We just need to make Earth not worth the cost." The Admiral considered this for a moment. "The swarm operates on a strict resource calculation basis according to your reports. If the cost of attacking Earth outweighs the potential gain, they'll look elsewhere," Jack finished. "We need to get back to Earth immediately and start preparations." Admiral Vex stood up. "I'll assign my fastest vessel to escort you. The Perseverance has done enough fighting for now." 3 days later, the damaged but still functional Perseverance arrived in Earth's orbit, accompanied by the cooperative patrol ship. Earth's defense forces had already been alerted and were mobilizing. But as Jack had argued, conventional weapons might not be enough against the swarm's biological technology. In a rare emergency session, representatives from Earth's nations met with cooperative officials, the crew of the Perseverance, and the rescued Luminary researchers. Together, they devised a plan that combined human ingenuity with alien technology. Engineer Morgan stood before the assembled officials, explaining their proposal. "By combining our modified terraforming technology with the Luminary's large-scale biological field generators, we can create a defensive system that specifically targets the swarm's biological weaknesses." "How quickly can this be implemented?" asked the Earth Defense Commander, a stern woman with decades of military experience. "With the resources of Earth's nations working together, plus cooperative assistance," Morgan replied, "we could have the first phase operational within 2 weeks. The swarm fleet will arrive in 3 weeks according to our calculations," Hila added, the patterns of light under her skin pulsing with urgency. The defense commander looked at Captain Jack. "Your crew encountered these aliens firsthand. In your opinion, will this plan work?" Jack stood up, his expression serious. "The swarm is formidable, but they have a critical weakness. They think like a hive, calculating risks and resources with cold logic. They don't understand how species from Deathworlds think." He walked to the front of the room, standing next to Morgan and Hila. On Earth, our history is filled with examples of weaker forces defeating stronger ones through creativity and unconventional tactics. The swarm expects us to either surrender or fight conventionally. They don't expect us to change the rules of the game entirely. For the next 2 weeks, Earth became a hive of activity itself. Teams of human scientists worked alongside Luminary researchers, building and deploying a network of modified terraforming devices in orbit around the planet. The largest terraforming platforms from Mars and Europa were brought to Earth and repurposed as defensive weapons. Captain Jack and the crew of the Perseverance, despite being offered well-deserved rest, worked tirelessly alongside the defense teams. They had faced the swarm and survived. Their experience was invaluable. On the day the swarm fleet was detected approaching the solar system, Earth was ready. The defensive network was in place, though untested at such a scale. Ships from across the Galactic Cooperative had arrived to support Earth, but they remained in the background. This was humanity's fight. Jack stood on the bridge of the newly repaired Perseverance, watching as the massive swarm fleet appeared on their long-range sensors. Hundreds of ships all moving in perfect formation. It was an intimidating sight. "They're hailing us," Tanner reported. "It's being broadcast to all Earth frequencies." "Put it on screen," Jack ordered. The image of a larger, more ornate version of the swarm aliens appeared. This one had more eyes and elaborate markings on its scaled skin. "I am High Commander Vrex of the Swarm Collective," the alien announced. "Your planet's biological resources will serve our expansion. Surrender now, and some of your people may be allowed to live as servants." Jack stepped forward, his face calm. "This is Captain Jack of Earth. We've encountered your kind before. We know what you want, and we know how you think." "Then you know resistance is futile," the swarm commander replied. "Our calculations show that your defenses are insufficient." Jack smiled slightly. "That's where you're wrong. You calculated based on conventional weapons and tactics. We decided to change the equation." At his signal, the Earth Defense Network activated. Hundreds of modified terraforming platforms powered up simultaneously, creating an overlapping field of energy specifically designed to disrupt the swarm's biological systems. The field expanded outward, reaching toward the approaching fleet. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The perfectly organized swarm formation began to break apart as their ship's biological components reacted to the field. Some ships veered. Off course, others lost power completely. "They didn't expect this," Jack said to his crew as they watched the swarm fleet falter. "They thought they were attacking a vulnerable world. Instead, they found a planet full of Deathworlders who know how to fight back." The swarm tried to press their attack, but as more of their ships entered the defensive field, more began to fail. Finally, after what seemed like hours but was only minutes, the remaining swarm vessels began to retreat. On the screen, High Commander Vrex's image flickered as the ship's systems struggled against the terraforming field. "This is not possible. Our calculations were based on incomplete information," Jack finished for him. "That's the thing about humans. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We learned to do the impossible just to survive. Remember that before you think about coming back." The transmission cut off as the swarm fleet retreated beyond the range of Earth sensors. The immediate threat was over. Throughout Earth's cities, people celebrated their survival, but Captain Jack and his crew knew better than to think this was the end. The swarm would recalculate, adapt, and possibly return one day. But next time, Earth would be even more prepared. In the days that followed, the Galactic Cooperative officially recognized humanity's contribution to defeating the swarm threat. Species that had once viewed humans with caution now looked at them with new respect. The Deathworlders had proven their worth. As for the Perseverance and her crew, they received new orders to lead an expedition to find the swarm's home world and negotiate a more permanent peace. It would be dangerous, possibly even more dangerous than their first encounter. But as Captain Jack told his crew when they received their mission, "This is what humans do best. We face the impossible, and we find a way to survive. Not just for ourselves, but for everyone." The Perseverance left Earth orbit 2 weeks later, heading into the unknown once more. Behind them, Earth continued its preparations. A planet of Deathworlders now.
The old warship drifted through space like a battle-scarred veteran, its hull bearing the marks of countless missions. The Defiant spirit wasn't pretty, it never had been. Its asymmetrical design made it stand out among the sleek, standardized vessels of the Galactic Defense Fleet. Some called it ugly. Others called it a mistake. But to Captain James Miller, it was the finest ship in the fleet, even if headquarters had just labeled it obsolete. Miller stood at the bridge's viewing window, his weathered hands clasped behind his back as he watched the latest batch of cadets snicker at his ship from their passing transport. The morning light from a nearby star caught the Defiant spirit's unusual angles, highlighting the off-center weapon mounts that had earned so much criticism over the years. Another group of youngsters having a laugh at our expense, sir. First Officer Tom Wilson joined his captain at the window. Unlike the pristine uniforms worn by officers on newer ships, Wilson's collar showed signs of repair, a perfect match for their vessel's worn appearance. "Let them laugh," Miller said, a slight smile crossing his face. "They don't know what this old girl can do." He turned away from the window and walked to his command chair, settling into the familiar cushion that had molded itself to his form over 15 years of service. The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, each one chosen specifically because they saw beyond appearances. They were the misfits of the fleet. Officers passed over for promotion because they asked too many questions, technicians who modified equipment in ways that made their supervisors nervous. Miller had handpicked every one of them. "Message from Fleet Command, Captain," announced Lisa Reed from the communication station. Her fingers, calloused from years of stringed instrument playing, danced across the console with unusual grace. "They're sending our final assignment before decommissioning." The word decommissioning hung in the air like a death sentence. Miller nodded, keeping his face neutral even as his stomach tightened. "Put it on screen." The message was brief, and to Miller's mind, insulting. The Defiant spirit was to escort 3 civilian transport ships through what was considered safe space, a milk run designed to let the old warship die quietly. "Well," Wilson said, trying to sound optimistic, "at least it's not immediate deactivation. We've got one last mission." Before Miller could respond, the engineering communication line crackled to life. "Captain, got a minute?" Chief Engineer Ann Roberts' voice carried its usual mix of enthusiasm and mischief. "There's something down here you should see." Miller exchanged a knowing look with Wilson. In the decade since Roberts had joined the crew, these something-you-should-see moments had become legendary. Each one represented another modification that pushed the boundaries of what a warship could do, and usually violated about 6 different fleet regulations. "On my way," Miller replied, rising from his chair. "Wilson, you have the bridge." The journey to engineering took longer than it would on other ships. The Defiant spirit's corridors didn't follow the standard layout, instead twisting in ways that had initially confused even experienced crew members. But Miller had come to appreciate how the unusual design created natural defensive positions and redundant access routes to critical areas. He found Roberts half buried in an access panel, her boots the only part of her visible. Tools floated in the zero-gravity workspace around her, held in place by weak magnetic fields. "What have you done now, Ann?" Miller asked, unable to keep the affection out of his voice. Roberts had been his best recruit, a brilliant engineer whose ideas were too radical for the fleet's conservative design bureaus. She extracted herself from the panel, her gray-streaked hair escaping its tight bun. "Remember how they said the power distribution system was fundamentally flawed?" Her eyes sparkled with the joy of someone about to prove conventional wisdom wrong. "Well, I finally figured out why the designers built it this way, and it's brilliant." Roberts launched into an explanation that, like many of her discoveries, challenged everything the fleet thought it knew about starship design. The Defiant spirit's irregular power grid wasn't a mistake. It was an innovation ahead of its time. With the right modifications, modifications Roberts had spent years secretly implementing. It could channel energy in ways other ships couldn't dream of. "It's like having 3 hearts instead of 1, she explained, pulling up a diagram on her tablet. "The asymmetrical layout means we can lose 2/3 of our power system and still keep critical functions running. But that's not even the best part." She swiped to another screen, showing power flow simulations. "We can also surge energy to any section almost instantly, without the usual power-up sequence." Miller studied the diagrams, a slow smile spreading across his face. "They're decommissioning us because they think this ship is outdated and inefficient." "If they only knew," Roberts grinned. "I've got similar improvements all over the ship. Those off-center weapon mounts everyone hates. They actually give us firing angles that conventional targeting systems can't predict. The inefficient life support layout. It's actually more resilient than anything in the modern fleet." A voice from the bridge interrupted their conversation. "Captain to the bridge. We're receiving the civilian transport coordinates for the escort mission. Looks like we'll have one last chance to appreciate your improvements, Anne," Miller said, turning to leave. "About that, sir." Robert's voice made him pause. "I know we're supposed to go quietly, but I've got a few more surprises ready to install. Things I've been saving for a special occasion. If this is going to be our last mission, maybe it's time to show what this ship can really do." Miller looked back at his chief engineer, seeing the same spark of defiance that had drawn him to this unconventional ship in the first place. The Defiant Spirit had been called many things: a mistake, a relic, an embarrassment to the fleet. But Miller knew better. In Robert's modifications and the ship's unusual design, he saw something else. Potential that nobody else had bothered to understand. "Do it," he said finally. "If they're going to retire us, let's make sure they remember us." As he walked back to the bridge, Miller felt a familiar sense of pride. The Defiant Spirit might not have been the prettiest ship in the fleet, might not have followed all the rules of proper warship design, but it had something special. His crew didn't just maintain this ship, they understood it, improved it, believed in it. The bridge doors slid open, revealing the standard pre-mission bustle. Wilson looked up from the tactical station. "Civilian transports are ready for escorts, sir. Standard formation." Miller settled into his command chair, thinking about Robert's hidden modifications and the ship's unconventional capabilities. "No," he said, surprising his first officer. "Let's try something different. After all, this is our last chance to show what the Defiant Spirit can really do." As the crew prepared for their final mission, none of them could have known that their obsolete asymmetrical warship was about to face a challenge that would prove every critic wrong. The Defiant Spirit might have been scheduled for decommissioning, but fate, and Engineer Roberts' unconventional modifications, had other plans. The escort mission started smoothly enough. The 3 civilian transports fell into formation behind the Defiant Spirit, their sleek hulls reflecting starlight like polished mirrors. These were new ships, built for comfort rather than combat, carrying colonists to the outer settlements. Captain Miller watched them on the main screen, noting how their pilots kept more distance than necessary from his unconventional vessel. "They're probably afraid we'll fall apart and crash into them," Wilson joked from his station, voicing what everyone on the bridge was thinking. Miller was about to respond when Lisa Reed's voice cut through the quiet bridge atmosphere. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange at the edge of our sensor range." Her fingers moved quickly across her console. "It's not matching any known signal patterns." "Put it through the main speakers," Miller ordered, leaning forward in his chair. The bridge filled with an odd, pulsing sound that made the hair on the back of Miller's neck stand up. It wasn't like anything he'd heard in his 15 years of space travel. Multiple objects just dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the sensor operator announced, his voice tense. "Big ones. Sir, they're arranging themselves in an attack formation." The main screen shifted to show a group of ships unlike anything in human records. They were massive, their hulls covered in what looked like overlapping plates of dark metal. As the crew watched, more vessels appeared, each one larger than the last. Incoming transmission, Reed reported. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. The voice that filled the bridge was deep and mechanical, likely translated by artificial means. Attention human vessels. You have entered space claimed by the Stellar Dominion. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. You have 30 seconds to comply. Miller's mind raced. They were in what was supposed to be safe space, well within human territory. Either these aliens had no idea where they were, or they didn't care. Either way, the 4 civilian transports under his protection held over 2,000 colonists. "Sir," Wilson said quietly, "our weapons were never fully restored after the last maintenance cycle. Fleet Command didn't think we'd need them for this mission." A smile crossed Miller's face. "Good thing Anne's been busy then, isn't it?" He pressed the engineering comm button. "Roberts, please tell me you've got something special ready for us." "Oh, you bet I do, Captain." Her voice carried an excitement that would have worried Miller if he didn't trust her completely. "Remember those power distribution modifications I showed you? They're not just for show. All ships, evasive maneuvers," Miller commanded as the 30-second deadline expired. The alien vessels opened fire, their weapons releasing streams of energy that cut through space like liquid lightning. The civilian ships scattered in panic, their captains trying desperately to escape. One transport took a glancing hit to its engine section, sending it spinning. The Defiant Spirit moved to protect it, and that's when Robert's modifications showed their worth. The asymmetrical weapon mounts, long mocked as a design flaw, allowed the Defiant Spirit to fire from angles the alien ships clearly weren't expecting. Their first volley caught one of the smaller enemy vessels completely by surprise, slipping through a gap in its shields that shouldn't have existed. "Their targeting systems are confused," Wilson reported, excitement creeping into his voice. "They can't get a solid lock on us. Something about our power signature is throwing them off." Robert's voice came through again. "That's because we're not playing by the rules, sir. Every other human ship follows the same power distribution patterns. We don't. Their computers can't predict where we'll be vulnerable because we're never vulnerable in the same place twice." The battle intensified as more alien ships joined the fight. The Defiant Spirit danced between them, its unconventional design now proving to be its greatest asset. When the aliens expected them to be reinforcing forward shields, Roberts redirected power to weapons instead. When they thought the ship would need to pause to cool its weapons, the irregular power grid allowed for continuous fire. "Status of the civilian ships," Miller demanded, gripping his chair as another blast rocked the ship. "2 have made it to faster than light speed," Reed reported. "The 3rd is still having engine troubles. The 4th," she paused. "The 4th is surrounded." Miller looked at the tactical display. The surrounded transport carried over 500 colonists, mostly families. The alien ships were closing in, their weapons charged. "Anne," Miller called over the comm, "remember when you said you had a few surprises saved for a special occasion?" "Already on it, Captain." There was the sound of rushing movement from her end. "You know those power surges the fleet always warned could blow up the ship. Turns out they were half right. We can create a surge, but instead of blowing ourselves up, we can direct it. Give me 2 minutes." Those 2 minutes were the longest of Miller's life. The Defiant Spirit took hit after hit, its shield holding thanks to the unpredictable power distribution. The crew worked with practiced efficiency, taking advantage of every quirk and flaw that made their ship different. "Ready," Roberts shouted. "But sir, this is going to drain almost everything we've got. We'll be running on emergency power for at least 30 seconds after." Miller watched as another alien blast nearly hit the civilian transport. "Do it." The Defiant Spirit's lights dimmed, and for a moment, everything went quiet. Then the ship released a pulse of energy, unlike anything the crew had ever seen. It spread out in an asymmetrical pattern, following the same irregular layout as the ship's power grid. The alien vessels, their computers designed to defend against standard attack patterns, couldn't adapt in time. The pulse overloaded their shields, creating gaps just long enough for the trapped transport to slip through. As soon as it was clear, the transport's engines flared to life, and it vanished into faster-than-light speed. The Defiant Spirit hung in space, its systems slowly coming back online. The alien ships, their formation broken and several vessels showing significant damage, began to regroup. "They're charging weapons," Wilson reported. "All of them. I don't think we can take another hit until our power recovers." Miller watched the alien ships, a calm settling over him. "We don't need to. We just proved something they didn't expect. An old, supposedly obsolete human warship could stand against their best technology." He smiled. "And if we could do it with a ship they thought was worthless, imagine what they'll face when they meet our actual battle fleet." As if understanding his words, the alien vessels began to pull back. Their retreat was orderly but quick, suggesting they were reassessing their strategy. "Transmission from Fleet Command," Reed announced. "They're picking up our distress signal. Battle group incoming in 10 minutes. She paused, listening to her headset. "Sir, they're asking how an escort ship scheduled for decommissioning just fought off an alien fleet." Miller looked around his bridge, at the crew that had believed in this unusual ship when no one else would. "Tell them the truth. Sometimes the best ships are the ones that break all the rules." He pressed the engineering comm one more time. "Anne, I think you better get ready to explain to a lot of admirals why breaking their regulations just saved 2,000 lives." The Defiant Spirit's systems hummed back to life, its irregular power grid proving once again that different didn't mean wrong. As they waited for reinforcements, Miller knew this wasn't the end. The Stellar Dominion would be back, and next time, they'd bring more ships. But now, humanity knew something vital. Sometimes the best defense was the one the enemy never saw coming. The Defiant Spirit's bridge buzzed with activity as fleet command ships arrived through faster-than-light jumps. Miller watched the newest, most advanced human warships take defensive positions around his battered vessel. The contrast between their sleek, standardized designs and his asymmetrical ship had never been more apparent. Admiral Thompson's hologram appeared on the bridge, his expression a mix of confusion and reluctant admiration. "Captain Miller, your ship was supposed to be on a simple escort mission. Instead, you've triggered first contact with an aggressive alien species and somehow survived a battle that should have destroyed your outdated vessel. Explain." Before Miller could respond, the ship shuddered. Robert's voice came through the comm system, more excited than worried. "Captain, you might want to get down here. Remember those modifications I mentioned? Well, they're starting to show some interesting side effects." Miller looked at the Admiral's hologram. "Sir, with your permission, I need to check engineering. Our chief engineer has some information that might be crucial to understanding how we survived." The Admiral nodded, his curiosity evident. "I'll come with you. Virtually, at least." The trip to engineering revealed corridors filled with repair crews dealing with battle damage. But unlike standard ships where damage meant systems failure, the Defiant Spirit's irregular layout had prevented any critical failures. When one power conduit was hit, the unusual grid simply rerouted through paths that shouldn't have existed. They found Robert standing in front of a large holographic display, her hands moving through complex power flow diagrams. "Captain, remember how I said our power distribution system was special? Well, the battle pushed it beyond anything I expected. Look at this." The display showed energy patterns flowing through the ship in ways that defied standard physics. Where normal ships had predictable power signatures, the Defiant Spirit's energy moved like water finding new paths through rock. "It's learning," Roberts explained, her eyes bright with discovery. "The irregular layout isn't just different, it's adaptable. Each time the enemy hit us, the power grid found new ways to distribute energy. That's why their targeting systems couldn't predict our weak points. We never had the same weak point twice." Admiral Thompson's hologram moved closer to the display. "That's impossible. Ship systems don't learn and adapt on their own." They do if you let them, Roberts countered. Every other ship in the fleet forces power to flow in predetermined patterns. We let it find its own way. She pulled up more diagrams. And that's just the beginning. Those weapon mounts everyone laughed at. They create firing patterns that no defense system is programmed to handle. Our shields don't just block attacks. They deflect energy in ways that confuse enemy sensors. Miller watched the Admiral's face as Roberts continued her explanation. The old man's expression shifted from skepticism to understanding and finally to something like wonder. The Stellar Dominion ships, Miller added, they were built around predictability. Their entire battle strategy relied on knowing exactly how their opponents would behave. But the defiant spirit, he smiled. We're what happens when you break all the rules they built their strategies around. A loud bang echoed through engineering, followed by a spray of sparks from a nearby panel. Instead of rushing to fix it, Roberts grinned. Watch this, she said. The ship's systems responded automatically, power flowing through unexpected pathways to bypass the damage. Within seconds, the affected systems were running at full capacity again, using circuits and connections that weren't even on the official ship blueprints. I've been adding these modifications for years, Roberts admitted to the Admiral. Small changes that built on the ship's original, unusual design. Each one broke some regulation or engineering principle. But together, they've created something unique, a warship that can think for itself. The Admiral's hologram flickered as he processed this information. You deliberately violated fleet regulations regarding ship modifications. Every single one of them, Roberts said proudly. And those violations just saved 2,000 civilian lives. Before the Admiral could respond, the ship's alert system activated. Lysa Reed's voice came through the comm. Multiple Stellar Dominion ships just dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They've brought something big. Miller and Roberts rushed back to the bridge, the Admiral's hologram following. The main screen showed what had triggered the alert. A massive Dominion vessel, easily 3 times the size of anything they'd seen before. It's their command ship, Wilson reported from his station. They're broadcasting on all frequencies again. The same mechanical voice from before filled the bridge, but now it carried a note of frustration. Your irregular vessel has violated all known combat protocols. Surrender it for study, or we will destroy every ship in this sector. Miller looked at his crew, then at the Admiral's hologram. Sir, request permission to show them exactly why breaking protocol can be a good thing. The Admiral was silent for a long moment. Around them, the fleet's modern warships moved into defensive formations, their standardized systems preparing for battle in exactly the ways the Dominion would expect. The fleet's tactical computers are having trouble integrating your ship into their battle plans, the Admiral said finally. Your power signature is too irregular. Your weapons don't fire in standard patterns. By every measure we have, your ship shouldn't even be functioning. That's exactly why we'll win, Miller replied. We don't just break their expectations. We break the rules they don't even know they're following. Roberts spoke up from her engineering station. Admiral, that energy pulse we used earlier, I think I know how to make it bigger. A lot bigger. But we'll need the fleet to protect us while we power it up. The Admiral's hologram straightened. Captain Miller, I'm giving you tactical command of this operation. Show us what that obsolete ship of yours can really do. As the massive Dominion command ship moved closer, Miller felt a surge of pride. The defiant spirit might have been scheduled for decommissioning, might have broken every rule in the book, but now those same violations might be all that stood between humanity and extinction. And he called to engineering. Show them why different isn't always wrong. The defiant spirit's irregular power grid began to hum, building energy in ways that no other ship could match. Around them, the fleet's modern warships moved to protect the ship that had once been their laughingstock. As the battle approached, Miller knew one thing for certain. Sometimes the best weapon wasn't the newest or the most advanced. Sometimes It was the one that broke all the rules. The space around the Defiant Spirit erupted into chaos as the Stellar Dominion command ship launched its first attack. Energy beams thick as buildings cut through the darkness, their power enough to vaporize any normal vessel. But the Defiant Spirit wasn't normal, and neither was its crew. Multiple smaller ships breaking off from the command vessel, Wilson reported, his fingers dancing across his tactical display. They're trying to surround us. Miller watched the enemy formation with growing understanding. They're still treating us like a standard ship. Look at their pattern. They're positioning themselves where our weak points should be. The fleet's modern warships engaged the smaller Dominion vessels, their standardized weapons and defenses meeting in a familiar dance of combat. But the Defiant Spirit had a different dance in mind. Anne, Miller called to engineering. How's that power buildup coming? Almost there, Roberts replied, her voice strained with concentration. But Captain, I found something else. The ship's irregular power grid. It's not just adapting anymore, it's predicting. It's starting to generate defense patterns before the enemy even attacks. As if to prove her point, the Defiant Spirit's shields shifted just before a Dominion blast reached them. The energy didn't just bounce off. It reflected back in a pattern that confused the enemy's targeting systems. Admiral Thompson's hologram watched in fascination. Their entire combat doctrine is based on predictability. They expect us to follow standard combat protocols because that's what their technology is designed around. Then let's show them something they've never seen before, Miller said. He turned to his crew. Release all safeties on the power grid. Let's see what this old girl can really do when we stop holding her back. The effect was immediate. Systems that fleet engineers had labeled as flaws came alive with new purpose. The asymmetrical weapon mounts created overlapping fields of fire that left no safe approach for the enemy. The irregular hull design, long criticized as inefficient, scattered enemy scanning beams in ways their sensors couldn't process. Sir, Reed called from communications. The Dominion command ship is broadcasting again. The mechanical voice seemed less certain now. Your vessel defies logical combat parameters. This cannot be allowed. You will be eliminated as an aberration. More Dominion ships poured out of the command vessel, each one targeting the Defiant Spirit. The human fleet moved to intercept, but they were being pushed back by sheer numbers. Power buildup at 90%, Roberts reported. But Captain, there's something else happening. The ship's systems, they're starting to work together in ways I never designed. It's like they're evolving. Miller felt the deck trembling beneath his feet as the Defiant Spirit's power grid channeled energy in ways that should have torn the ship apart. But instead of failing, the irregular systems strengthened each other. Each flaw covered another's weakness, creating a whole that was stronger than any standard design could achieve. They're launching their main weapon, Wilson shouted. The Dominion command ship's front section split open, revealing a massive energy cannon. The weapon began to glow with a light that made the bridge crew's eyes water even through the filtered screens. Anne, Miller called. We need that power now. It's ready. But sir, it's more than we expected. The ship's irregular design, it's amplifying everything. If we release this much energy, she paused. Well, we're about to really break some rules. The Dominion weapon fired, releasing a beam of pure destruction. At the same time, Roberts activated the Defiant Spirit's power surge. The two forces met in space, but what happened next defied every combat scenario ever written. The Defiant Spirit's irregular power grid didn't just release energy. It released chaos. Waves of power rolled out in patterns that changed every microsecond. Where the Dominion weapon expected to find resistance, it found nothing. Where it expected empty space, it found shields stronger than any ever recorded. Their weapon is destabilizing, Wilson reported, his voice filled with awe. They can't maintain the beam pattern. Our irregularity is causing their systems to adapt. Roberts finished for him. But they can't. Their whole technology is built on unchanging patterns. They don't know how to handle something that keeps changing. The Dominion command ship's weapon overloaded, the feedback causing explosions along its massive hull. Smaller ships scattered, their formation breaking apart as they tried to process what was happening. "Status of the fleet?" Miller asked. "Holding position," Reed replied. "But sir, they're all reporting the same thing. The energy patterns from our ship are affecting their systems too. Everything's starting to behave unpredictably." Admiral Thompson's hologram smiled. "Maybe it's time our fleet learned that some rules are meant to be broken." The Defiant Spirit's power surge continued to grow, its irregular patterns spreading through space like ripples in a pond. Each wave carried the lesson that had saved the ship from the scrapyard. Sometimes the best solution was the one that broke all the rules. "Dominion ships are retreating," Wilson announced. "All except the command ship. They're trying to copy our power signature." "They can't," Roberts said with certainty. "Their systems are too rigid, too standardized. You can't copy chaos. You have to embrace it." The Dominion command ship tried to move, its massive engines flaring. But the Defiant Spirit's energy field had done more than just overload their weapon. It had introduced uncertainty into their perfectly ordered systems, and their technology couldn't cope with the change. "Sir," Reed called out, "new transmission from the command ship. But it's different." Multiple voices, all talking at once. The bridge speakers came alive with a cacophony of mechanical voices, each one repeating the same message in increasing tones of confusion. "Error. Parameters exceeded. Combat protocols invalid. Reality does not match predictions." Miller watched as the massive ship's lights flickered, its systems unable to handle the concept of unpredictability. "Send them a message," he ordered. "Tell them sometimes the best way to win isn't to follow the rules. It's to break them in just the right way." The Defiant Spirit hung in space, its irregular design now a beacon of victory rather than a mark of shame. Around it, the human fleet began to understand what Miller and his crew had known all along. True strength didn't come from following every rule, but from knowing which ones needed to be broken. The Dominion command ship drifted powerless in space, its once mighty systems corrupted by the chaos the Defiant Spirit had introduced. Around it, the human fleet held position, their crews still trying to understand exactly what they had just witnessed. The irregular warship that had been headed for decommissioning had just changed the face of space warfare forever. "Main power is returning to normal levels," Roberts reported from engineering. "Though I have to say, normal has a whole new meaning now. The ship's systems are still evolving. Every power surge taught them something new." Miller stood from his command chair and walked to the main viewport. The Dominion command ship was massive, its dark hull now marked by flickering lights as its crew struggled to restore order to their rigid systems. "Status of the enemy vessel. Their main computer is trapped in a logic loop," Reed answered from communications. "They built their entire technology around predictable patterns, and now those patterns are broken. They can't even raise their shields without their systems trying to adapt like ours, and failing." Admiral Thompson's hologram appeared on the bridge, his expression a mix of disbelief and admiration. "Captain Miller, I've just finished briefing Fleet Command. They want to know exactly how an obsolete warship managed to defeat the most advanced alien vessel we've ever encountered." Miller smiled. "By being exactly what they labeled us, irregular, unpredictable, and wrong by every standard measure." He turned to face the hologram. "Sir, permission to board the Dominion command ship. I think we need to see exactly what our chaos did to their systems." The Admiral nodded. "Granted. But be careful. We still don't know much about these aliens." The boarding party assembled in the Defiant Spirit's launch bay included Miller, Roberts, and a small security team. As they approached the alien vessel in their shuttle, Roberts couldn't stop taking readings on her portable scanner. "This is amazing," she said, showing Miller the display. "Their ship is trying to copy our irregular power patterns, but their hardware can't handle it. It's like teaching a computer that only knows straight lines to understand abstract art." They docked with the Dominion ship through an emergency airlock. Inside, they found corridors lit by flickering lights and walls covered in displays showing error messages in alien script. The few crew members they encountered seemed disoriented, their methodical minds struggling with systems that no longer followed rigid rules. The ship's command center was a massive chamber filled with crystalline computers and holographic displays. Alien officers moved in confused patterns, trying to restore order to their chaotic systems. Their leader, a tall figure in an ornate uniform, approached the human boarding party. "You have corrupted perfection," the alien commander said through a translation device. "Our systems were flawless, based on unchanging universal constants. Your vessel has introduced irregularity." Robert stepped forward, her scanner still taking readings. "Your mistake was thinking that perfection means never changing. The universe isn't built on unchanging patterns, it's built on adaptation." The alien commander studied them with multiple eyes. "Our civilization has conquered 12 star systems using predictable, calculated warfare. Every species we encountered followed logical patterns. Until that incorrect ship of yours." "Not incorrect," Miller corrected. "Just different. And sometimes different is exactly what you need." A junior alien officer rushed up to their commander, displaying a holographic readout. The alien language meant nothing to Miller, but the commander's reaction told him everything he needed to know. Their perfectly ordered civilization was facing something it had never encountered before: uncertainty. "More of our ships are reporting system failures," the commander admitted. "The irregularity is spreading through our network. Ships that have never encountered your vessel are beginning to show signs of adaptation. We cannot allow this to continue." "You don't have a choice," Robert said, checking her readings again. "Your entire fleet is connected by quantum networks, isn't it? When our chaos affected your command ship, it spread to every vessel linked to your network. They're all learning to be unpredictable now." Admiral Thompson's voice came through Miller's communicator. "Captain, we're detecting massive energy fluctuations throughout the Dominion fleet. Some of their ships are starting to show power signatures similar to the Defiant Spirit." The alien commander sank into what appeared to be a command chair. Centuries of perfection, undone by a ship that should not work. The translator couldn't quite capture the emotion in the alien's voice, but it sounded almost like wonder. "I can help you," Roberts offered, surprising everyone. "Your systems aren't failing. They're evolving. They just need guidance to handle the change." Miller watched as his chief engineer began working with the alien technical staff, teaching them how to embrace the chaos she had spent years perfecting. The Dominion's rigid technology slowly began to adapt, finding new ways to function that their designers had never imagined. Hours later, back on the Defiant Spirit's bridge, Miller read the preliminary peace agreement that had been drafted. The Dominion, their perfect military hierarchy shaken by the introduction of uncertainty, had chosen to negotiate rather than risk further corruption of their orderly universe. "Fleet Command has canceled the decommissioning order," Admiral Thompson announced, his hologram looking pleased. "In fact, they want the Defiant Spirit to become the prototype for a new class of warships. Ships that embrace irregularity instead of fighting it." Roberts looked up from her engineering station, where she had been documenting all her unofficial modifications. "They do realize that means breaking about half the regulations in the fleet manual, right?" "I think," Miller said, "they've learned what we knew all along. Sometimes breaking the rules isn't just an option, it's the best option." The Defiant Spirit's irregular power grid hummed with energy, its systems still learning and adapting. The ship that had been marked for destruction had instead changed the course of human history. Its flaws had become strengths, its irregularities had become advantages, and its willingness to break from tradition had saved countless lives. "New orders coming in, Captain," Reed announced. "We're being assigned to work with the Dominion technical teams. They want to understand how our ship thinks." Miller smiled. "Tell them they're asking the wrong question. The real question isn't how our ship thinks, it's how it taught their ships to think differently." As the Defiant Spirit moved into position alongside the Dominion command ship, its asymmetrical design no longer drew mocking stares. Instead, it stood as a testament to the power of breaking expectations, of finding strength in being different. The ship that broke every rule had not just survived, it had changed the rules of warfare forever. And somewhere in engineering, Ann Roberts was already planning her next set of impossible modifications, ready to prove once again